I'm Daniel, and today I'm by myself because David's too busy hanging out with his girlfriend. But today's guest is somebody I actually met, I think at this point, maybe like one and a half, if not almost, yeah, about like 1.5 years ago at this point. But welcome to the podcast, Andrew Grau. Did I
hmm
pronounce it correctly?
Yep, Grau's correct. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I mean, just like give us a bit of like, like a short bio about yourself.
Sure, no problem. My name is Andrew Grau, like David so nice to say. I prefer just being called Grau straight off the bat. That's kind of like what I go as when I'm on stage, when I introduce myself to people, because it does the whole, hey, my name's Andrew, but everyone calls me Grau. Grau? Grau. And then by the time you say something three times, you got it. So it's like it's a little device I use to get remembered. Yeah, I'm a musician, bassist, and a songwriter from upstate New York. I'm from the Finger Lakes region. If people do know where it is, that you can guess, it's one of I lived on one of the seven Finger Lakes. So take a guess. I went to school at SUNY Oneonta. That's why I know. That's actually how I met Daniel, because
Exactly. Yeah.
we did a mixing board to management thing, and I've been in
Mhm.
New York. This is my 10th year being in New York, so I've been in a little bit longer. After I went to school at Oneonta, I did my jazz masters at Queens College.
Mhm.
That's where I got a master's, and then after that, I moved on into the realm of music industry, where I worked as a contractor on behalf of YouTube to help launch the YouTube Music app. And
Mhm.
then after that project was offshored, I moved over into the world of publishing, and so I've been working at the Royalty Network, which is an independent publishing company in New York, and I've been there for about 3 years. In addition to that, I have been up until the pandemic. I was also an actively touring uh, bassist and session musician. I don't have as many I don't have as many records as I would have loved to have cut in the time and all the number of millions of groups I've played in over the years. But even actually as much as like this year seems to be better. I mean, I already got booked on a touring act that has some pretty hefty workload coming up. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there and playing this summer. So yeah, that's a little bit of me.
Nice, yeah. Because I remember seeing recently, kind of like on your Facebook, that you're
hmm
that you're like gearing up to do shows with your own band, if I'm not mistaken, or is that yeah?
Yes, that is. Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, currently I'm in this group called Common Kicks. It's an indie rock band from Brooklyn area. As with a lot of bands coming out of the pandemic, it's like, what do we do? Because I haven't been with them that long. They were kind of already around for a bit, and then I kind of came in because they had to kick out their other bassist, and then now it's like, okay, now that we have to go back, now that we can go back to clubs, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to see? We're really trying to get an album out because we've got 10 originals that we'd like to at least just have out there, whether or not they're good, whether or not it all makes sense. It's like, still better to have physical visual product. We did have a gig last Saturday or last Friday at the Bowery Electric,
Nice.
which was fine. It's a venue that I've had the opportunity to play at multiple times, and it definitely is weird to do it in a pandemic where you can't really interact with anybody. We also opted to not have a live audience because
Oh,
honestly,
okay.
like it was already hard enough bringing people out to the Bowery if you're kind of a no name. And it's even worse during a pandemic when not everyone's vaccinated, not everyone's going to show up. Um, it was kind of unfortunate, I guess. I mean, there's also hindsight 2020. It's like we could have probably done hybrid of both, but the cost of, I guess, like the cost of bringing in the video crew would have kind of negated our ticket sales, and we also didn't know how busy it was going to be, how the weather was going to be, because that's
Hmm.
just that's for some reason we're in spring, but it's still waking up every day in the 40s, so it's like we
Yeah.
can't really tell. You can't really count on anything. So there's like a lot of growing pains in that sense. And it sucks too because normally I don't show up to places and play without me getting paid because I've just been very fortunate enough that I command an okay price,
Yeah,
and
of course.
people know, oh, you can count on this guy. Show up, get paid, go home. We're all happy. So it's different to kind of be in like the ground up part of a band. That to me is something that I feel too old to do, but it's like okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that brings up like a kind of like a good point of kind of like earning your stripes as a musician, I guess. And
Mm,
obviously, I mean, you went to like jazz school, so I know
mhm,
that you're obviously kind of like on like a different level professionally and kind of like
sure.
musically. So like, I mean, I guess tell me a bit about your musical journey in the sense of like, you know, why do you start playing bass in the first place, and what led you
Mm.
towards kind of like doing this as like a
Oh,
full-time
okay.
sort of thing? Yeah, sorry about
Yeah.
that.
So my no worries. So my journey, I come from a like a long line of like really frustrated musicians that just couldn't, whether it was the circumstances just couldn't do it. So, or like they just didn't like they took other opportunities and didn't actually pursue music. So like I was the one who was like, oh, I feel like there's something there for me. Let me figure out what it is. And I played piano and cello as a child, but I wouldn't say like anything outrageous, but like I really wanted to do something in music. And then when I was like 14 or 15, I worked a greasy spoon diner job washing dishes, and I saved up a bunch of money and I bought my first bass and I just started taking lessons. And my teacher was like, hey, I think something's here. So then I just kept going, and just like within 3 years of like picking up the electric bass, I was playing upright and I was auditioning at music schools, and I was just going with it. I chose Oneonta because of the music industry program, obviously,
Mhm.
but also the bass teacher there, Rich Mullen, who I believe still teaches there,
Yeah.
really is just like an excellent musician, and just like I learned so much from him. And I talked to a former student who was like, "Hey, you should really go here," and I did, and I'm really glad I did, because then from there I was able to work at the summer camp that used to run up at Oneonta. I did all the sound, like
Oh,
sound recording and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, they no longer exist, which is sad. But that's where I met my bass mentor, who lives in New York City. Who he met me when I was like 19. I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and he was like, "Hey, man, you should come to the city, like learn jazz, play, do this." And I saw him, 2 summers back to back, and we still keep in touch today. And then,
Nice.
he was one of the biggest reasons why I was able to kind of move down to the city. And then when I was in grad school, I like literally only cared about jazz and only played jazz and only did jazz until I was about a year out of school, and I really wasn't getting a lot of gigs, or if I was, it was like $50, jazz gigs here and there. And then I had a friend of mine that went to grad school that said, "Hey, man, I'm starting a wedding company. We need a bassist. Can you hop in on this?" And I remember
Nice.
he called me right after a gig that we had did for my own group, and he was a saxophone player. He called me at like 2 a.m. Was like, "Hey, man, can you come to rehearsal tomorrow?" I was like, "Sure thing." And then I've been in that wedding band ever since. So that's why I think it's my seventh season with them. And I've
Um,
literally, yeah. And from there, I had to relearn electric bass. And from that point on, basically, I was like, well, I was 23 at that point. From then, I just kept saying yes to everything, because that was
yeah.
something I also realized. I was like, I also live in the city where there's a million bassists, there's a million good bassists, and there's a million better bassists. And there's like better bassists that I know personally and would like to this day still want to get like dinner with. Um, and it's put me in so many weird rooms, put me in so many weird situations, but it's also been like, oh, cool. So I did a record for somebody I did a tour with. His producer liked me so much that I still am with his thing that he does, and it's like this collective of Broadway singers that do these like crazy raves. And every time, and we've done like Rocky Horror Picture Show, like just live.
Nice.
And like, what? How did I fall into that? That's weird. Because I just kept saying yes when people said, "Hey, are you available?" Kept saying yes. "Hey, can you do this?" "Yeah, sure, no problem. I can definitely do this." And it's like, I know it's silly, because I've been able to do so much gigging in my time in New York, like all around in tours and things, but I still sleep terribly when I have to turn down a gig, because like,
Yeah.
what if it turned into something cool? And the rule that I learned, and this is something that, it's silly, but it always happens. It's like every time I go out of town, no matter what time of year it is, no matter if it's in a pandemic or not, every time I've gone out of town, I have to turn down a gig. And sure enough, in March, I went to Seattle for 10 days to just like hang out. And a dude who I hadn't played a gig with in like 2 or 3 years at this point was like, "Hey, man, can you play a gig this Friday?" And I was like, "No, I can't. I'm in Seattle." And and I know he has a regular thing too, and it sucks. I could have gotten in on a regular thing, but it's
I mean,
it's fine
but
at the end of
probably
the day.
because of the pandemic, that probably went away really quickly, right? Whatever opportunity that
Yeah,
could have been.
yeah, exactly. And but so it's, I mean, that's kind of like a loose, because I could talk about myself till the cows come home,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, that was kind of like my musical journey, kind of getting into it, and just saying yes to everything has really
yeah.
opened every door for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think now would kind of be like a good time just to actually listen to kind of like one of your songs or like anything you've liked work on. So I guess I would assume that would you want to kind of like do the latest project that you've worked on?
Sure. We actually that's the thing that sucks, is like we don't have anything out yet, which
Oh,
is
okay, I
really
see.
frustrating. But I do have something I could share. This is actually she actually left. I'll actually
Yeah.
share it in the Zoom link. Um, she's this singer songwriter that I worked with pretty much up until the pandemic last year, and I think she's now on the West Coast. But she still like plays and still writes. Her name is Clover. Her actual name is Clover, and the band is also called Clover.
Oh, nice.
And she's just this incredibly talented singer songwriter, really soulful, very young person, but like she's a good energy, and she's a really
Mhm.
cool person. And weird enough, I met her through her mom's boyfriend, who I used to play in his daughter's band when his daughter lived in the city, and we did an album
Interesting.
together. So it's just one of those things where he reached out to me. This was 2018 at this time. He said, "Hey, man, like, what's going on? Are you around?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm in New York." He's like, "Hey, do you want to meet up with my girlfriend's daughter? She's a really great singer, and I think you guys had hit it off." And like, sure enough, like a year later, we basically played every So Far that came into town. She was like the So Far poster child for it, and I was like, "This is ridiculous." And like, what? How did I get involved in this? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a So Far person. I mean, for those of you that aren't watching, I'm wearing a hockey jersey. Like, I'm just like a upstate guy. I don't know how to be cool. I can't wear cool hats like Daniel can. Like, I'm just like this nerdy dude, but
Yeah.
I just keep getting in the right rooms with the right people. So yeah, I shared this love. That's like something that I'm super duper proud of
Okay,
as well.
awesome. Well, let's take the time to listen to it right now. Boop.
Sure.
Yeah, so now is the time for the interlude.
You feel like walking a tightrope, eyes blindfolded in the black of the night, boy. Got your hands gripping the rope, don't leave me no slack, no. Hold it tight, boy. This love, this love. Started catching myself.
So, hey guys, welcome back to this episode of Sounds Like NYC. And we just finished listening to one of the many acts Grau has has worked with. And Clover is her name, correct? If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Clover is
And
the
this
band name.
song,
Yeah.
I forgot its name, so sorry.
Oh, This Love.
This love, yeah.
Yeah.
So were you kind of like in this, yeah, so like I'm a I'm an aspiring kind of like musician as well, professional musician as well. And I
Hmm.
one day want to be able to do session stuff and things like that. So like what was the experience kind of like recording bass for this song? Was it like you just like recording it kind of like in your like apartment, or
Mm.
was it kind of like a very live thing where everybody was like kind of in the same room cutting the
Mm.
track together? Just like take me through the process.
Sure. So if y'all haven't already given money to Daniel's campaign, I gave money and was very, very happy to. So gotta help other
Thank
artists,
you very much.
because I did a Kickstarter back with my own stuff back in 2016, and
Oh,
every penny counts.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
And don't forget, I think that whatever money you spend on it, you can write off in your taxes. That's something that's really important.
I'll
Um,
be sure. I'll be sure to remember that.
yeah. So the interesting thing with Clover is that most of the musicians that she works with, or at least the ones that we recorded this track with, went to Bard University.
Oh,
And when you're an alumni of Bard, you can have access to their state-of-the-art recording studio.
whoa.
So,
Okay.
because the guitar player he's a very good producer and he's a very good guitar player in general. He's like a very soundscapey sort of dude, and he has his own studio out in Jersey City. I think it's called the Diner Studios. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's Diner Studios. And he does an excellent job. Like he really did. I think he did all the recording and the mixing. So what we did was drove up to Bard, and it was myself and the drummer, who was it was another young man who just graduated from City College, who's now in Montana, and we had Clover do kind of do like scratch vocals. We had
Mm,
the guitar player kind of lay in scratch guitar work, because everything is kind of based on what vocals and guitar are doing.
mhm.
And the drummer and I just basically I think we did 2 songs that day. We were in there for a while. We did a lot of takes, which,
Yeah.
it's all the direction of the producer, because it's like I've totally gone in and done things one take and it's great. I've totally done things where I've been called out by the producer being like, hey, you got to redo that, you really fucked it up. But the nice thing is with Clover's group is that when I started rehearsing with them, I specifically said, as is my job as the bassist, do
Mhm.
you have something in mind here? What do you want to hear? Like I can do whatever. If you want me to do whatever I want, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And if you don't like it, you have to tell me. Luckily, in the song This Love, like every note I wrote myself basically, and it's really just a bass line. But I mean, even the choices of when I'm going to play a certain rhythm with the drums, when I'm going to play a certain rhythm without the drums, where I'm putting the note on the bass, whether it's higher or lower, really was like artistic directions that I took with it. And also to kind of give a little bit of extra layer, because at the end of the day, this is a four chord song without like the sax on it, without the keys, without the guitar, without all the vocal layering. It's really a simple song. So my whole thing is like, okay, how can I really like not only like play so that I'm not just bored out of my mind, but also like give it this sort of artistry that if someone who's really listening going, oh shit, they're really doing something cool there. So that's where I approached this song. I don't always approach stuff like that all the time, but
Mhm.
especially when it comes to original music and someone says, play whatever you want, I'm like, okay, that's a good thing. Cause like I'm gonna try to be tasty as possible. I mean, it's like, in this world with, like one of my friends and colleagues is the bassist Adam Neely, and
Oh
he
yeah.
yeah, and he's a really good friend.
Awesome name drop, by the way. It came out so smoothly. You just said it so nonchalantly, just like rolled off the tongue. Great, great stuff.
It's because he would be mad if I called him Neil Sauce. He doesn't like to be called that, but Neely is a really good friend and colleague, and in
Mhm.
a world where I know this dude personally and he can just shred his face off, I'm like, man, like I can shred, but like I don't. That's not even like how I want to play. Like I would rather
Mhm.
play do like really simple but really effective.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like as much as Thundercat is like one of my favorite bassists of all time. It's like I've even like sat down and learned his shit. I'm like, I don't think I would ever organically want to just play half the
Dude,
things he plays.
yo, Sun Gazer. Oh my
Yep.
God. It's like how I mean, let's we can just like go into like a whole
Yeah.
tangent about like Sun Gazer and stuff. And I'm looking forward to whenever they put out like
Yeah.
more like music. But like yeah, Adam is definitely built different.
Yeah, he really is. And and that's something too that like that I learned more than anything during my time in New York and just in general. It's like, hey man, you're gonna meet a lot of amazing musicians, but there's only one you. And it's like some people really, really like the way I play, some people don't. And I had to learn that like it's not necessarily a personal thing. Like some people don't like my personality, which I get, but some people just don't like my bass playing. That's fine. Some people love it. Some people love it like food, and that's cool. Like the people that I know who really love the way I play bass and the way that I approach music, that's cool. And just like I don't know if like Adam would get hired for like a revival like soul band, but that's also something he might not care about. So it's like,
Yeah.
and it's playing intentionally is the most important thing I learned in the studio. It's like when I did on my website, I have like all the albums I've been on and stuff, and I have like some bootlegs from the group I used to run. And my one friend that I went on tour with, that I did his EP. It was all electronic music. I don't even know why he had me in there. Like they did so much production. I mean I could pick out where my bass lines were, but I was like, I really didn't do much. He pretty much wrote everything. It was fine. But, even when I was in a situation where I didn't have to do anything except show up and play, I still played it very intentionally. And I made sure to ask the producer, hey, I'm going to take this and I'm going to do it this way because I think this might blend better. And he was like, that's great. I didn't think of that. And if he would have said, no, play it exactly the way it's written, you go, okay, that's fine. Like, however you want it to be done. It's like, but play it intentionally. And there's so many people that you will learn, that you will meet in your life, because you're still, quite a young man, still quite, young in the scene in New York. It's like there's a lot of people that play music and there's a lot of people that play at music, and you'll figure out pretty quickly who's playing music and who's playing at the music.
Okay, wait, because okay, that's my first time hearing anything like that. What do you mean when you say playing at music?
So anybody can play guitar, anyone can play bass, anyone can play piano, and anyone can do like a pretty good job. And like pretty much anybody can get a gig. I mean, I know things are a little different now, but you know, people who are really playing music, I mean, that just feels like it goes right down deep inside. One of the bassists who, whatever he's on, I'm just blown away, is Pino Palladino. I mean, all the stuff he
Yeah,
did with
yeah, yeah.
D'Angelo, all the stuff he does with Questlove, I'm just like, that guy plays the bass. He doesn't
Hmm.
play at the bass.
Hmm.
And there are like, I mean, I don't think I can name drop people that suck, because that's not very nice, and I don't go
Oh my
around
god, yeah.
shitting on people. But I have
Punk rock
worked.
bassist, maybe.
Yeah.
This is just like
Well, I mean, I remember there was a group I played, and I will definitely not drop the name, because
yeah.
I because I've because even though I was released of my duties from this group, I don't harbor ill will, and I also don't go around shitting on them, because that's
Mhm.
also very unprofessional. But I remember in the rhythm section, the guitar player, who I still keep in touch with, an excellent guitar player. I mean, he was actually probably one of the better, just like general guitar players that I've met and played with, and he also was a pretty good singer. The drummer was a really excellent punk drummer, but nothing else. So it
Uh,
felt like for him, if he had to learn to play, you know, Take Me Home Tonight, he would play at it. He wouldn't play it with the same deference as like he would a Blink 182 song.
mhm.
And I also get it. Stylistically, he was raised on punk. He played punk. He used to tour, like he did the Vans Warped Tour with a bunch of bands. Like he gets it. He gets that side of it. But he was just playing at the drums on everything else, and not playing the drums. And being able to remove like yourself from the situation of like, well, I'm this bassist. Be like, no, 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 but I'm playing the bass. That's like a huge, huge difference. And
Yeah.
that's and you know what's funny? Rich
Mhm.
Mullin was the one who said that to me. He goes, "Don't play at the bass, play the bass." And I was like, "I don't know what you mean," because I was 19. And he was like, "A lot of my students," he's like, "they just show up, they play at their bass, and I give them an A, and they go home." And he's like, "But you take the time and effort to actually spend it with your bass, so you can play the bass, so that you can show up and play the bass." And that's like a that's a lot of there's a lot of another thing too. I highly recommend to any listeners who are either struggling, or they need to figure out like what they want to do with their instrument, with their voice. I definitely recommend still like always continually taking lessons, because as much as I'd love to pretend I don't need to take lessons, it's like, no, I still need to take lessons, because at this point in my life, it's like a lot of teachers more or less give you sort of zen ideas, sort of like centering ideas, sort of like, hey, this is a lot more than just the actual playing of the bass. This is the idea of the bass. This is what makes this flow through me. And that's like an important thing to kind of center yourself. um, and I also always tell people, as someone who struggled very much in grad school at a jazz program, I really wish that they would have taught me that it's okay to like listen to the bassists you like instead of listening to like the musicians that they tell you to like, because at the end of the day, it's like I like certain things and I'm always going to sound better trying to play like them than I am somebody that I'm not really vibing to. So it's like discovering your own voice through your own through your own likes and wants is a really important thing, and that I spent a lot of my 20s figuring out.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. I guess I guess like playing an instrument and playing at an instrument would kind of fall into the same, I guess, like metaphysical idea of kind of like, being a guitarist, being a drummer, and
Hmm.
but and then that and then also or the difference between being an a guitarist, drummer, whatever, that and being a true musician in the sense of like,
Yeah.
understanding music on a
Hmm.
fundamental level, not just like through the interface
Yeah.
of your own instrument.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. That's
Yeah,
exactly
because
it.
because do you think learning how to kind of like play at your instrument involves reaching a certain level of like technicality, or is it just like a personal progress of you learning how to basically communicate the best way through your like, given instrument?
That's actually a really good question.
Thank you.
Um, that's a very good question. So I think that there is something that everybody has to go through, and they kind of call, musicians who practice a lot. Because I remember in grad school, I practiced like 5 hours a day, and I really needed to because I really kind of came in, kind of half cocked, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of defensive of my own playing because it's like I got here by myself, and that was just a bad attitude to have. So for me, it's like I had to take a lot of licks and like really just like study the instrument and become comfortable with it, because that's something that you can't replicate by just doing. You have to spend the time to actually be comfortable with your instrument, and that's something that I kind of get. I'm not irked about. But something that does irk me a bit is when I'm out to see a something or another, and someone who's not a musician or doesn't understand the craft of it will say, "Oh man, they just make it look so easy." I'm like, "Yeah, because they spent time on it." Do you think I wanted to spend 5 hours a day practicing upright bass? No. Did I? Yeah. Am I super comfortable playing upright bass? Yes, I am. And it's like even like electric bass. When I had to relearn electric bass, I literally was the worst thing someone had ever said to me. They said, "You sound like an upright bass player playing an electric bass." And I was like, "Excuse me?" They're like, "Yeah." They were like, "They're two different instruments." They're like, "You don't sound like an electric bassist. You sound like an upright bassist." And I was like, "That mother." But then I would listen back to my own playing. And I was like, "Shit, man." I used to literally listen on the way to the gig I was playing, because it was a weekly thing that I had in this like little bar in Times Square. I would listen to last week's gig and be like, "What the fuck am I doing? Like, how can I get better? Like, whatever." And I had to take a lot of serious licks, but then I just started getting more comfortable with like my bass, the sounds, what I wanted to sound like. I was listening to dudes. That was when I went through my insanely heavy phase of like Derek Hodge and Robert Glasper, like Thundercat, Flying Lotus. That was when I got super into MF Doom, and my practice used to be like warming up, getting my hands like accustomed to the bass, and then I would just transcribe MF Doom like tracks, because I was like, this guy grooves so hard and he's using samples. Like, what am I doing wrong? How can I not even just like not even it's like there's so much that it's just like I just really had to listen, I had to practice, I had to learn. And I mean, even to this day, I don't even I have a gig in a few days. I'm actually playing a live show for
Nice,
live
nice.
people out at a college somewhere, and I'm like, that's so great. Even before I bother looking at the music that I have to like make sure I'm prepped for, I spend at least 20 minutes warming up, because it's like I just gotta center myself. I gotta get my comfortability back. I gotta get my brain thinking the same way my hands were. And it took a long time for me to get there with electric and upright. And it's like, oh, it's funny too, whenever I go on vacation, I almost never, unless I'm going to see my parents, I almost never ever bring an instrument with me, because I'm like, I need to completely disconnect, because it's like, once the gears start turning, they don't stop. And I'll get back and I'll start practicing, I'll start warming up, and I'm like, I'm out of practice. And it was a week. It was a week. But just getting to that sort of level of comfort means that you can play at you don't play at your instrument, you're playing your instrument, because once you reach the level where you're so comfort where you were so comfortable where you can pick up your bass or pick up your instrument or even sing, and just from all the years of like working on your fine motor skills, working on your vocal cords, working on even how your brain just approaches, this is how I'm supposed to play, that's when you can really start making music. That's when you can really start showing, this is me, this is my voice. And you have to unfortunately play at your instrument a lot longer, it feels, than you playing your instrument. So I'm coming from the other side of that journey where I sucked it up for such a long time. But now, like, even when I'm on like wedding gigs, it's like I know this material so well. I'm so comfortable with everything I have to do. I'm playing stuff that's like stupidly ridiculous, but it sounds great because I'm like, yeah, I'm so comfortable. Like I'm like like we play We Are Family every gig. I don't think I play the original bass line except for the first chorus because I'm just like, I can just do whatever the hell I want because I'm
Mhm.
so comfortable. I know this song, I know this feel, I know this group, I know how it's gonna work. And it's, man, practice. Practice makes perfect.
Yep, yep, yeah. That's definitely a lesson that I'm like learning and stuff like that. It's just like, because for me, like the hardest part is just like getting that initial, I guess, overcoming kind of like the like initial kind of like laziness or like
Hmm.
procrastination of like even like picking up your instrument. But once you
Hmm.
get into like the groove, into like the zone, yeah,
Yeah.
everything becomes much easier. And I'm
Yeah.
definitely think I'm in the process now of like getting like really comfortable at just like I guess, yeah, that sort of thing of like almost becoming one
Hmm.
with the guitar, or just being so in tune with yourself and your fine motor skills. Because I'm definitely at kind of like that like sort of like point in my journey. So it's like really cool hearing kind of like this new perspective about like playing at your instrument and stuff like that. Because I
Hmm.
think I'm definitely a far ways off from that. But I mean, yeah, obviously practice
I mean,
is
hey
what it
man,
takes.
enjoy the journey, because that's something that nobody told me. It's silly to think of now, but it's enjoy the journey, because I definitely know I sound better. I mean, I definitely know I sound better than I did back in 2015. I sound better now than when I even had my own band and I was writing jazz tunes. Like I sound better now than I've ever sounded, save for like the 1 year where I was like constantly on tour. It's like it's just a part of growing up. And something that I do tell people, um that that say that they struggle with practicing or whatever, and I get it, because like during the first part of the pandemic, I literally was like in a constant anxious bubble where I was like, what's going to happen? Am I going to play again? What am I going to do? um I would set aside for myself just 20 minutes a day just to warm up, not even practice anything, not even play anything, because 20 minutes is just enough to kind of get your brain thinking in a different direction. And if it's 20 minutes of like really intense focus, like you can really kind of change like how you're, like if you want to move on, or if you just like that 20 minutes was good enough for me like right now to kind of get me out of wherever I am. And then, I mean, now I'm at the point where my New Year's resolution was to get back into playing piano, because I hadn't played piano with any regularity since grad school. And I was like, okay, 3 to 5 times a week, at least 20 minutes a day. And I've kept to that since January, and it's felt good. And I can actually see, and it's not even been 6 months. Yeah, it's only been 4 months, and I can like do all my scales like with ease. I went through one method book, and now I'm just working on like playing songs and stuff. And it's like practice really does make perfect. And it might seem like an inconsequential amount of time, but I mean, even like last Friday when I had a gig, I kind of had to go right from work to the gig. I still warmed up for 20 minutes before I went to go play, because I was like, man, if I show up to the gig and my brain isn't in the good headspace and my shit's not together, my stuff isn't warmed up and I'm not prepared, then I'm gonna flub something and I'm gonna feel shitty about it the rest of the night. Whereas instead, like I had a pretty good night, and I actually like even played some really stupid shit that was like that worked out great, because I'm like I was warmed up, I felt good.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cause like for me, I guess this is like sort of like a tangent, but like
sure.
um are you comfortable enough with the bass? And I guess if you like you probably are, but for me, I get like a bit of like stage fright anytime I pick up kind of like a guitar that's like not mine. Like say that I go to like a music store, like I
Yeah.
have to find myself around the instrument. I don't know if that's just like a matter of fact of like not being comfortable and that's something that you can like never overcome, or like have you
Mm,
like reached a place? Have you reached kind of like a nirvana where like any bass you pick up, even if it's not like specked out to your
mhm.
like setup, like can you like competently play it, or does like everybody still have that like initial kind of like shyness? I don't know.
So actually, that's fun. That's funny you bring that up. Electric bass, almost no electric bass gives me a problem, unless it's because I do regularly gig and tour with a six string as well as like practice on four string stuff like that sort of stuff. Like most electric basses don't bother me unless they're like super duper heavy. Where I can't hang is other people's uprights. I it's and I had a teacher in grad school. He was my last teacher. I was an unbelievable bassist. His name's Lonnie Plaxico. He was like one of the last bassists in the Art Blakey Jazz Messengers. Like he's like avant-garde, like soul extraordinaire. He's played with everybody. I mean, he's this guy. This guy literally says he's like, yeah, I don't sleep anymore. I just like get 2 hours and I wake up. I start practicing. Like he's really on some different shit. And he was the first bass teacher that told me how to properly hold my instrument. And then I was in my 20s and he was like, this is how you hold your instrument. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, this is how you hold your instrument. He's like, you literally need to feel the entire weight of your person into this instrument, and you need to feel it against you as well. You need to have this kind of symbiosis that if one of you pulls away, the other one's going to fall. And he's like, from there, that's when you can bring your hands up and you can play. And I'm like, excuse me, like just completely blew my mind. So I rented out my upright to someone. I'm not going to drop the name because I don't want to put him on blast, but he accidentally dropped my upright, bringing it back to me. Luckily not a problem because like he got it fixed. It was no problem, but he did bring me a loaner because I had a gig in the meantime. And that loaner, um I remember the day before the gig, and I've been practicing on it because I was like, I need to know where everything is. I need to feel comfortable. I was like, I don't know if I can do this gig. I mean, I did the gig and I did fine, but like by the end of that gig, I was like, man, I don't like this upright anymore. This is feels awful. I hate this. And then 2 weeks later, I had another gig with an upright. Luckily, mine had come back into my life. Played. It was like nothing. I was like, oh, this is what my baby feels like. This is my upright. So I really don't jive with other people's uprights, but electrics for the most part aren't a problem. But man, guitar especially if you're really into a certain type of neck or you're really into a certain manufacturer. Like I mean, as much of a layperson as I am when it comes to guitar, it's like when I play like a Telecaster, I'm like, this is great. I like this. Then I play a Strat, I'm like, I hate this. Or like play a Gibson, I'm like, I hate this. I don't. Who made an SG? I hate this. This is awful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess like us, like I don't know, electric musicians are kind of like spoiled, you know,
Yeah.
for most of history within like the classical world. Like there's just like literally one design that everybody had to play it, or else that was it. But like yeah, definitely like bassists and definitely guitarists are like way too spoiled.
Yeah, 100%.
But I mean, so let's talk about um kind of like your life within New York City. So like
Sure.
I mean, how do you think, like considering this past year of like social distancing, quarantine, whatever, like how do you feel about the city for as long as you've like lived in it up until now? Like what is your current, I don't know, psychology about the city?
Mm. So this was something that I still kind of have in the back of my head. I had a really good professor. Did you ever have any classes with Dr. Markison at all?
No. Oh, so the class that I had with him, It was online actually, so I never had it
Oh,
in person. Yeah.
that's such a shame because Dr. Markison, Dr. Stephen Markison, not only is he an excellent educator, probably one of my favorite teachers I've just worked with. Also, shout out to Dr. Tim Newton. He's one of my favorite
Yeah.
teachers, and I called him
Never
the
had a
other
class with
night.
me either.
Dr. Newton. Dr. Newton is one of those guys that made me go, I love music because
Mhm.
he loves music. But Dr. Markison, he was a great teacher. He really liked me. He really enjoyed that I cared about his classes and I wrote good papers and that like I really listened to everything he said. And I told him, I said, hey, I got into Queens College. I'm really excited. I'm going to go to take a jazz program. And he said, good for you. Just be careful because New York City can really swallow you up.
Mhm.
And that is something that is super true. um, I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like there's this badge of courage I'm going to wear post pandemic. Of I stayed here. I was able to make it work. I still was able to gig a little bit during a pandemic, and I'm out on the other side. And at no point during the pandemic did I go, I should probably move. Because I have a lot of friends and a lot of colleagues who left because they're like, I'm not making money. If there's no gigs, why am I here? Broadway's not here. Why am I here? And I get it. My situation, I'm blessed enough I didn't have to. But the drummer that it plays in the Disney cover band that I tour with,
Okay, yeah.
he who unfortunately struggled a little bit more when it came to just like gigs and like just work and stuff. He even said to me, he goes, "Fuck them. People that don't want to live here shouldn't live here." He's like, "This is like, yes, this is an expensive city, but you know that getting into it, like, this is a great place, and
Hmm.
if you don't like it when there's nothing to do, then you're not gonna like. You shouldn't be able to get to enjoy the things like when shit comes back."
Hmm.
And it's like I when I was living in Midtown in Koreatown during the pandemic, that shit sucked. I was not a fan of my neighborhood. But,
Yeah.
you know, prior to it, it was great. Now I live in Brooklyn. Now I love the city again, like even more so. But at no point was I like, I want to leave because there's everything so available here. There's so much stuff to do. And there's just like the community and the people that I know here are just I would do anything for. And that's just something that I don't think I want to try to start over again. And just New York has this vibe that is impossible to replicate anywhere. And
No,
like
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I definitely am not shitting on my friends and colleagues who will listen to this and who did move because everybody has a different thing. Like I have a really good friend that he's an excellent drummer. He just said, "Peace. I'm gonna go to Austin. I want to have a family." That's props,
No, that's
man. Like
respectable. Like, yeah.
that's some I'm glad that you and also you had gigs to go do that. I don't. I unfortunately kind of put all of my eggs into the New York City basket when I moved here by myself at 2022. It's like, and I've luckily been able to do a good job of surviving and thriving. But man, like New York is it's just my favorite city in the world. And I've had the opportunity to see a lot of them. I still need to see a bunch of them, but New York City is just it's just the best.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I mean, to be honest, I would be much more inclined to kind of like live here longer than I want to if
Mhm.
like the winters weren't so harsh. Because like I do not like the cold at all, and
Dude.
like and for me, New York City is definitely the best during like the spring and the summer because that's
Yeah.
when you can like really kind of like take in all of the city without getting,
Hmm.
you know, frostbite.
It's so funny you say that. It's like, that's something that and I'm from upstate New York where we have winter a lot longer than New York City. And
Yeah,
even New York City winters, I'm like, I don't like winter. I am
yeah.
not a winter person. I also don't like epic summers. I really hate how hot the summers get here, but it's
Hmm.
like, there's something that like really impressed me that I got to that is something I kind of took for granted before as well. Pre-pandemic, I used to be so busy all the time that or claimed I was so busy all the time. I never supported my friends as much as I would have liked, or supported my colleagues as much as I would have liked. And to the point of whenever I'd show up at like a friend's gig, they'd be like, "Yo, I haven't seen you in a year. Where have you been?" I was like, "Ah, busy." And last Thursday, I was able to go see my friend who does acoustic sets at like restaurants and bars and stuff. And she's, just starting to get gigs back out there. And not only to see one of my closest friends perform, she nailed it, but to go out to a place to enjoy food, to enjoy music, and to get drinks, like on a Thursday, man, that's like places do that, but no place does that quite like New York. And just the quality of like musicians just everywhere is something that's super impressive. I mean, I think maybe Nashville has that level of musicians everywhere. I think Austin has a lot of that as well. Certain parts of LA definitely, Chicago definitely does. But I'm like, man, you can't get that outside of New York, really. And even just the fact that like this is something that my partner makes fun of me all the time, but pre-pandemic, every time we were in the train station and someone had like a guitar bag or like a music instrument, she'd be like, hey, do you know this person? And I would look over and go, hey man, what's up? Because I knew everybody. Even during the pandemic, when I was going to Delaware to visit my folks, there was a guy who walked in with a guitar, and I was like, Matt, what's up, man? Haven't seen you. And it's just even during pandemic, I know it's like I know everybody, and it's like but that's just the community that you get with New York, and the longer you work in it, the longer you stay, the more effect you're going to have. And from someone who's I wouldn't say I'm like a grizzled veteran, but I spent a lot of my time in the trenches. you know you have a great attitude, keep it up, keep doing your own thing, keep working at your music, at your craft, but definitely say yes to everything, because that's like I wouldn't have met half of the friends that I have in New York, like close friends, if I didn't just say yes and just want to play music and get to know people. And like that's a really important thing that you're
Yeah.
going to want to take advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I mean, yeah, thank you for like so much knowledge and just like definitely kind of like a whole new perspective,
Sure.
through this conversation, because I'm definitely gonna take, all the little nuggets of knowledge that you've imparted on me going into, recording this album or like EP. We'll see how much the budget allows us. But like, yeah, I mean,
Of
thank you so much. If there's is there
course.
like before we end the episode, I mean, is there like any kind of like last pieces of kind of like I don't know, pieces of wisdom that you want to impart on us, or just like kind of like shout outs of like your friends or like projects or whatever that you want to,
Sure.
shout out?
Sure. I'll do it in three parts. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the key to success, and this is something that I was also told to me in undergrad, and I have found this to be true, which is why
Mhm.
I've gotten success. Success is a three-legged stool. If you take away one leg, the stool will fall down. So the three little legs of the stool are: show up on time. Always show up on time. I was actually so happy when I popped on the Zoom, you were already there. I was like, this band knows to be on time. Always be on time. Two, don't suck. If you're going to show up to a gig, show up ready to play, show up prepared, and show up like that stage is lucky to have you on there. No matter the stage, no matter if it's a fucking hole in the wall bar that is only paying you in tips and drinks, like show up and play your best that you've ever played every single gig. And three, don't be an asshole. Because it really like there are very few people I know in New York that can get away with being late and kind of being an asshole because they're so good and they've also that's like their vibe. But that's like one person I know. Really nobody else can get away with it. And it's like if you do those three things, that will get you so much further and that will get your foot in so many doors. And let me tell you, it has gotten my foot on in so many doors with so many amazing people. And I can't even tell you how I've even had people come back and said, yeah, we had this other bass player. He was really kind of an asshole. You're a lot better to work with. Didn't say that I was
There you
a,
go.
didn't say I was a better bassist. Didn't say I was more on time. Just said, yeah, you're not an asshole. So that's a big thing. Shouting out. Oh, also here's something I do want to shout out for everybody listening. This is something that like it took me too long to learn, but this is something that will help you take care of your mental health. That is something that no one told me, that nobody really, I felt like I mean, it's still like a lot of stigma around it, but I'm telling you, the more that I go through this life, the more I'm glad that I, go to therapy. I'm on meds that like really help my anxiety, and I'm like not ashamed to talk about it because some of my closest friends and colleagues are like, yeah, man, I've been on antidepressants for 10 years. I'm like, shit, really? They're like, yeah, like you just need to address it. And so that is something that you absolutely need to take care of, is your mental health, because that's going to help you so much further down the road. And it's like, especially after such a horrible time like a pandemic, address that mental health. This is the year. Get yourself the help that you need. And you know what? Don't be afraid to ask for help either. And that's something I need to tell myself all the time. And when it comes to shouting out, check out the group that I currently do most of my like gigging and touring with. They're called the Little Mermen. It's a Disney cover band,
Mhm.
and they kick ass. There's a ton of videos up on YouTube, but also you can check our Instagram page at the Little Mermen. You can also check my page at Grau_music. That's where you kind of get kept up with everything that's kind of going on. There's links to like common kicks and stuff, which I think we're going to try to branch out and do some bar gigs this summer to kind of like, like putting a premium on the club stuff right now. It's like, let's work on just like, getting out there, playing more, doing it smartly. And that's also where I do most of my like posting or whatever. And then after that, man, I'm just go Penguins. I want them to go Stanley Cup again this year. So that's all I got.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Grau, I mean, yeah, thank you so much for, coming on the podcast. And I'm so happy that we've had this time to kind of like reconnect,
Yeah, man.
after meeting up back 2000, it was the fall of 2019, because it was
Yep.
my last semester up at like Oneonta.
Yep.
But I'm like, yeah, I'm so happy to see that you're like doing fine and kind of like
Yeah, man.
thriving
Yeah,
despite
you
like,
too.
this like whole wacky situation.
Yeah, man. And I'm glad you're also in the city, because it's like
Yeah, I mean, I can't go anywhere else because like my whole family's here and stuff like that. So it's
yeah.
just either
But it's just like, you know what? I get it, man. It's like I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you have a job that you seem to like. And it's like, man, just like keep working on that album. I'm really excited to hear the final project.
yeah,
I'm really
definitely,
excited to hear
definitely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
thank you so much.
course,
All right.
man.
So hey guys, thank you for watching this episode of Sounds Like NYC. See you in the next one.
Yeah.
And there we end. Yeah, dude, thank you so much again for coming
Well,
on. It was great.
thanks for having